channel as it is a public meeting. So now that Kari has pushed the button, everything we say and do here is visible to the public on the county's YouTube channel.
And you're not on the school board in Oakland, California. Is that what you're saying?
And we're not cats either. I see Mr. O'Malley is joining. Mr. Executive, did you want to go ahead and call the meeting to order so I can call the roll?
Sure. The meeting's called to order. Please call the roll.
Okay. I'm calling the roll of the Cuyahoga County Economic Development Commission for its regular meeting on February 26th, 2021. Mr. Budish?
Here.
Present. Mr. Schron?
Here.
Mr. O'Malley?
Here.
Mr. Ebersol?
Good morning. How are you?
Hey, Dave.
Mayor Gallagher?
Here.
Mr. Burns?
Present.
Mr. Roman is not present. I understand will be joining later.
Yes.
Mr. Hall is not present, but I understand will be joining later. And Mr. Friedman.
He
He's
has
not present.
declined, so he's has an excused absence.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Great. Thank you. Is there any public comment?
Mr. Chairman, the meeting notice provided the opportunity for anyone to submit public comment by 10 o'clock this morning by email. No comments were received.
Okay. Everybody's seen the minutes from October 22nd. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye or put your thumb in the air.
Aye. Yes.
Aye.
All three.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. I think the first thing I wanted to do before we get to the State of Ohio Innovation Zone, I just want to do a little bit of a welcome here to our newest member, in particular, Dan O'Malley. It's really a pleasure for me to welcome Dan to this commission. Dan's the president of Lakewood City Council. He's been on Lakewood City Council since 2015. I've had the pleasure of knowing Dan, I think even longer than that, quite a while. He's worked in the labor movement for his career and is the executive secretary now of the North Shore AFL-CIO. He's really done great work in Lakewood, focusing on issues, many of which are near and dear to my heart, like transparency in government, helping small business owners, improving parks and public resources, and advocating for low-income and vulnerable residents. He introduced an ordinance to protect LGBTQ workers and residents of Lakewood against discrimination in education, housing, employment, public accommodation. The county, as you know, especially as Jack knows, we passed something similar because, it's the right thing to do. I appreciate Dan's leadership on this and lots of other issues. When I heard Dan is joining and I was asked to give a welcome to him, I called my son, Dan, my son, Daniel, and because he's had the opportunity to work with Dan in several occasions, several different capacities. I asked him, what do you think? Is Dan O'Malley okay? He says, no, he's not okay. He's fabulous. So I, of course, listen to everything my son says and take that very seriously. So anyhow, I want to welcome Dan. Do you want to say a couple words, Dan? You want to?
Well, that's high praise coming from Daniel, and I just want to say it's an honor to be representing the union community here on the Economic Development Commission, and we bringing my moonlight job as City Council President to bear here too will hopefully provide me with some good perspective, but looking forward to learning a lot and providing my voice when I can. So thanks very much for that warm welcome, Executive Budish, and glad to be here.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan. Okay, next item on our agenda is the State of Ohio Innovation Zones. We have, I think, Bill Kaler I saw, and he's the CEO of Team Neo, and Aaron Pitts, who's the Senior Managing Director for Health Innovation at Jobs Ohio. I've had the pleasure of knowing both of them for a long time. Aaron has been helpful to the county in several capacities. And of course, Bill Kaler works with us all the time. So I'll turn it over to Bill or Aaron, whoever wants to take it.
Aaron, would you like to take the lead here and talk about the Innovation District itself? And then I'll wrap it around some of the different things we're doing as a community that we think to leverage it in complementary ways.
I'm happy to. Thank you.
Great.
Pleased to be with you today. It's great to see you all. Would it be helpful if I shared my screen with a couple slides? And then, Mr. Budish, what kind of time allocation would you like me to do this in?
You have to keep it within about 4 hours. I would,
Okay, fantastic. I think I can do.
cover what you need to cover.
Can you see my slides?
You can. Thank you, Aaron. At least I can. Everybody.
Yes.
Fantastic. So let me, yeah, okay, fantastic. Well, thank you again for being here. I'll be really brief here. I have a couple slides on jobs. We can move on from there. So, our stated ambition from the Lieutenant Governor is to be the most innovative entrepreneurial state in the Midwest. We join into that ambition, and it's really the basis of the investments we're making. Fact base that we developed a couple of years ago that recognized that Ohio is not sharing in the growth in the most fast-growing parts of the U.S. economy. And it's owed to really, we think, three dynamics here. One, an unfavorable sector mix, which is to say we've got a long, proud legacy of industrial economy. We have a dearth or lacking our fair share in the highest growth aspects of the economy, which are health services and technology-based companies. And so our strategy is really founded on doing something about that unfavorable sector mix. And then these types of companies need in-demand talent, call it. And then the third part of our strategy recognizes that there's a bit of a dearth in investment capital required to scale up new inventions that are made. So, you'll see our strategy is three-part there. This is just facts supporting what I just articulated, which is if you look past 10 years in the U.S. economy, health services and technology represent 100% of the net growth in the economy outside of retail. And it's the industrial companies, types of sectors at the bottom that are shedding jobs to automation and outsourcing and, all those dynamics that we all know too well. In terms of tech talent, Ohio's not terrible here. We're 12th growth and absolute numbers in the country. We're the 7th largest state, so slightly below where we should be in terms of growth, 37th in growth rate around producing tech talent. And that's a key part of our strategy here as well. So we said, what could Jobs Ohio do? Well, we could invest in innovation districts, and we could put some investment capital to use here. And you'll see that, if we build these innovation districts in Cleveland, Columbus, and Cincinnati, not because of those three cities, but because that's where the bulk of the Carnegie One level research gets done and the big universities are. If we anchored in those three places and co-invested with those anchors, we could grow more tech talent, grow more research, invent more ideas, and then on the right side, put our capital to work and in collaboration with the private market to trap that activity here in Ohio and in Northeast Ohio. So The innovation districts, this is a well-studied thing. Brookings has a whole research component around this, but it's a place where these things come together. So it's a bit of a placemaking effort. And our vision for Cleveland had been in the University Circle area where, logically the clinic, CASE, and UH are centered, but we recognize, there are multiple places where this activity can happen. And we know there's a Midtown initiative as well that Bill can speak to and that you all know well. And so we're not trying to be exclusive here. We're just acknowledging that it's a logical place where academic research, large STEM talent pools are, where companies would logically anchor. A combination of academic institutions, medical research facilities, corporate, and startup type activity. And so in Cleveland, I suppose it was, I don't know, how long ago was this now? A few weeks back. We announced a collaboration. It was endorsed by Governor DeWine, Lieutenant Governor Husted, led by the 5 anchors in Cuyahoga County: Cleveland Clinic, Cleveland State, CASE, Metro, and UH. And what Jobs Ohio did was invested a little over $100 million towards a larger commitment that each of these institutions are making to ultimately produce more STEM grads, do more research, grow more jobs. And when we say grow more jobs, it's feed the existing base of employers and attract outside-in employment opportunities. And we think if we get down this path over 10, 15 years, it'll produce a significant economic impact to Cuyahoga County. And so we were thrilled to put together this, kind of 5-party deal, called it the Fab Five. And this is just another illustration of essentially the same data and what roles each of these institutions play. So I'll pause there and ask any clarifying questions, or Bill, put it to you.
One question from my perspective, Aaron. Good morning. Good to see you.
Great to see you, Ted.
This is consistent, as this is our Economic Development Commission, and as you know, and we declared innovation and supported the CIP effort. And so this certainly enhances and builds out that strategy. What role, from the state standpoint, do you see the city and county playing in advancing this? I mean, how do we best think about contributing to accelerate this effort?
Maybe I'm not best positioned to answer this, but from 144 miles away, Ted, I would say there were really 2 things that kind of drove us to this conclusion. You saw the sector mix opportunity, these big employers in Cuyahoga County. We thought it was important, actually, that the state had invested a significant amount of money to put in this opportunity corridor that led right up to this place. And so that's, and the city of Cleveland had been marketing this area as a new economy neighborhood. So that seemed to fit with this. And so I would just say, we've played our little incremental catalytic part here, both at the state level and then the Jobs Ohio level, to catalyze some of this investment. And really now I think it's incumbent upon these 5 anchors to work with the city and county to help make all this come to fruition. And we're going to continue to be there with you in feeding this. But Bill, what else would you say?
Yeah, so Ted, thanks for the question. You rightfully note the CIP work and frankly, other work that is being done around it that is significant. What I am really excited about in this, beyond just the combined investment and the focus of the activity that's embedded on the page, is the opportunity to connect the dots on a lot of the other work being done, either at CIP or other work that we're already doing with the community. Let's say, for example, in East Cleveland, in looking at some of those issues there with the community in Jobs Ohio, in the Opportunity Corridor, the investment, for example, in the Nottingham Spur EY Innovation Hub. All this stuff, if we are really smart about it, helps leverage the respective investments that everyone is making, whether the really large ones that we're talking about on the page, through the Innovation District collaboration of the 5 anchors, or through the collective work that is being done in CIP. And you all are in it already. As part of this activity here, there is an assumption and some commitments that have been made about new jobs to the Cleveland area, Northeast Ohio. And as part of that, we're going to have an opportunity to have some conversations with some very significant named institutions that will be collaborating with some of the larger companies in the community, certainly the clinic and the other healthcare institutions here. So there are a lot of opportunities that I see as we get in it by working better together, leveraging the CIP work, and then leveraging what I would call the garden variety tools that Jobs Ohio delivers every day.
Yeah, and I would just like to comment that given the fact that Baiju Shaw, our new head of GCP, was instrumental in leading Cleveland Innovations Project, this comes back to synchronicity and having a good leadership. Right, Bill?
I think so. And you know, today is the day for Baiju, and it's right to acknowledge him for sure. But we've got a lot of other good leaders at the table with us, and a lot of other members of the community in it, working together in ways that are trying to figure out as the work becomes clear within the Cleveland Innovation the district that Aaron is talking about here, how all that work comes together and how we can build some capabilities around it that bring leverage to the whole.
For sure. Thank you.
I have a couple questions if I can ask. And I don't know whether this goes to you, Bill, or to Aaron, but Jobs Ohio is putting in $100 million. Cleveland Clinic's putting in, I think, $300 million is what I recall. First of all, is Cleveland Clinic's $300 million, is that different, additional to what they would normally invest in their own, research, development, commercialization activities? And second, for the $100 million from Jobs Ohio, where is that? Who's gonna direct that?
Okay, so I'll address, I don't want to speak on behalf of the clinic, but they have committed, and I think they've been public about building new research towers to accommodate the growth that they're, so some could question whether that's, new or different. I think the great news in my mind here is that each of these five we approached individually to say, what are you trying to do strategically and how can we help? So we have 5 separate transactions totaling from Jobs Ohio, slightly over $100 million. And they go to each institution to embolden their strategies. So Cleveland State is going to evolve their computer science programming, orient towards growth in that area. And we've provided some catalytic money to allow that to happen, to allow them to get down the path of recruiting faculty and recruiting students and providing scholarships, et cetera. For CASE, it was to expand upon their massive research enterprise, and they've made a commitment to do that. And we've co-funded some of that with them. Same story. They're big in research, as you know, and we're gonna catalyze more growth in that area. Metro plays a fantastic role in this as well, and so we provided an agreement with we negotiated an agreement with Metro to have them do more of what they do and uniquely do, which is fantastic. And then the clinics made a massive jobs commitment out of the gate and a commitment to build physical real estate, and so that's the playbook that we're executing in order to, again, it goes back to grow more talent to feed the base, do more research to invent new IP and make new discoveries, build place, and recruit.
And one of the things that I think is
allow companies to expand.
One of the things I think is really important here is we're all in conversations around the community about what we need, what our gaps are, what our opportunities are. And these investments are now focused on those areas where we all often would say our opportunities are gaps. And so if you believe in the notion of focus, alignment, and accountability like I do, that those are all embedded in this. And we have an opportunity to connect some dots in some real significant ways around this.
Hey, can I share just a data point here that I think this group would find interesting? Maybe you already know. I just got this analysis that the Cleveland MSA from 2015 to 2020 net grew young population of 20 to 34-year-olds and has in fact become has a 19% youth population, which is fantastic. So kudos to the county and the city for growing this young population. And we're super excited to join in with you to make this continue to be a great, vibrant place.
Can I ask, Ted, you had asked, is there anything that the opportunities we see for the county to be involved? Are there certain things that you all would say you'd like to learn more about? That you all would say you would like to get more deeply engaged? Really happy to facilitate more dialogue on that, where it would make sense.
I have a thought, but defer to the county exec for his perspective.
Well, I would just like to get, a whole lot more information on each of these 5 branches, and I appreciate the overview today. I'd like to get more into details, and then we can better figure out how we can the efforts.
Okay, why don't I take that as a takeaway, and we'll follow up and make that happen.
Great.
Yeah.
Armin, question?
Yeah, please.
Yeah,
I don't see on my
it
map.
sounds like when you hear the Cleveland Innovation Project being discussed, Aaron, it almost always seems to be a conversation around medical and the healthcare sector out there. And I know that Team Neo did some calculations, and it shows that the GDP for this area, manufacturing is 46%, is $46 billion. And medical is, though it's a big contributor, is only 24 billion, still a big number, but it's almost about half of what the contribution is of the manufacturing sector. And I know the county is specifically focusing on the sector partnership where the manufacturing is the lead, followed by healthcare, and then followed by IT because of that contribution. I don't seem to see anything in there when you talk about the big leaders. I don't see the Eatons. I don't see the Swagelocks. I don't see any of those innovative companies out there being listed on there. And obviously the President of the United States is highly advocating that we recharge manufacturing innovation. And for anybody who's been to a manufacturing plant, they know that it's as innovative as anything you're going to see anyplace else with technology. And so it's always disconcerting when that seems to be all the announcements, all the press releases, all everything, and you'll see the list of the contributors. So how would you answer that piece of how it fits into the 46 billion versus the 24 billion as far as GDP?
Yeah, and GDP is different than employment, obviously. So Jack, it's a great question. And back to our strategic thrust here, the initiative that we've invested in is attempting to grow more technology-based companies and more healthcare and life sciences type companies to help balance out Ohio's economy. As we've seen during COVID, or as we've seen during a recession, these businesses seem to be more resilient, and we're not running away from. We've got massive other investments going in the manufacturing space. So I don't want to say we're ignoring the manufacturing space. This one specifically, with these anchors, was to drive that portion of the 24 billion economy, or whatever number you use. And then I know the CIP has
Team Neo's number, not mine.
Okay, yeah, but okay, and the CIP initiative, I think, is anchored around exploiting the industrial economy opportunities as well. Is it?
Yep.
Bill?
Yeah. So what I would say also, Jack, is as I look at the Innovation District investment from Jobs Ohio, there are some points of leverage, I think, especially when you look in the talent piece from Cleveland State and Case. A data scientist is a data scientist at some level. I hope I didn't offend anybody. Yes, data is different in healthcare, and it could be different in different parts of manufacturing, but they're talking about building that IT talent that I think is leverageable quite likely in other industries. One. too. I think what we're going to find over time, opportunity to leverage the Nottinghamsburg EY Innovation Hub. There are already connections at the most senior levels between the institutions, and so we can fold that in. This is where, finding the points of leverage between CIP and the Innovation District investment are going to be so important. I think they're there, but we've got to connect the dots.
Sadly, if you look at the NASA's innovation, none of that, a single one of those has ever been launched in Northeastern Ohio as an end user business. It always seems to leave town. And so if we could actually just focus on that, because everything has to be made at some point, put in a box or a ventilator or any, as we saw, the importance going through this pandemic. If we didn't have the physical products, none of this would have gotten to where we are. So I just want to make sure that it's as on that thought of that innovation as much as any of these other technology concepts that we're talking about.
Well, so I would say that's a great example of where the opportunity to connect dots are. GCP has done a lot of work with NASA over the years. OAI has done a lot of work. Dr. Perez Davis is on the CIP steering committee, and Jobs Ohio has launched a new sector effort around military installations and federal locations. So again, these are big opportunities and big problems that require a lot of resources, and it's up to us in the community to figure out how to connect the dots and find the points of leverage. I think they're there, and we have to figure out how to do it.
Bill,
Chairman, go ahead, Brian.
yeah, I just want to add on to the comment about connecting the dots and finding points of leverage. And Bill and I are both involved in CIP, and my role recently has been to ensure that the project is looking at how it's equitable and inclusive. And I'm sorry I missed the first part of the presentation, but I think across all of these sectors, particularly when we look at the problems of our region and where unemployment is greatest, where wealth and income are the least, having CSU involved in creating data sciences, we've got some specific visionary objectives about how we create equitable talent and across manufacturing, water, IT, and healthcare. While this might be a piece of it, this investment, we just went through scenarios last week about what will we do and how will we influence those investments to make sure that they're equitable. So this is not as much of a question as you and I have some work to do. We got a call at 12, and we're going to be working on the next 3 weeks on how do we make sure these investments lift the whole county and not just parts of the county, or bring in talent from outside, and we continue to expand the gap.
Right.
Yep, no, agree wholeheartedly, Brian. Good to see you. Good morning. My only thought, consistent with the executives, is to leverage and have a deeper understanding, get into more of the details so that the county can align its strategies and programs to support and accelerate. So I think we've done some of that on a project basis, on a one-off basis. I think of our IBM Explorers work with the city, so that would fall into this category. But certainly, Bill, leveraging and integrating more effectively the workforce connect effort to the particularly the CSU. He took the slide down, but that really jumped out at me, so that we leverage our tactical investments and they reinforce this. So that's the work of this office in the county to really work with you in that regard. And I think we can realign our programs.
I thank you for raising that one. It's an example where we have not just opportunity, but we have things in motion, investments being made that we can leverage, and that's the opportunity we have.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll take that as a follow-up. I own it.
Okay.
Anything else on this? Anybody have any further questions on, or anything to add on the innovation zones?
Yeah, if I could. One of the items I'd like to flag and try to focus on would be some thoughts around sites and locations. we've had a good partnership with Jobs Ohio and the Opportunity Corridor and finding sites in that area. But I think as we start to think about this innovation district, we're going to need to think broadly about trying to maybe not accelerate that process, but expand it and create, find ways to create more sites and more locations and think more about what buildings we can, what building footprints we might need. And so, you know, if there's an opportunity to maybe create a work group or something around that, that might be a good way for us to participate from the local government's perspective and in partnership with some of the site work and I'm forgetting the name of the site program that Jobs Ohio has, but that would be part of it. So
OSIP work, yes. Yes. So we will, we are a little bit ahead of you on it and are beginning to think about what that could look like. And David, we would love to get you engaged here. We're thinking the same way.
Yeah, just to supplement that, you know, and Bill, you and I have talked about this before. You know, most, if not, I won't say all, but most economic development efforts in the county and city, you know, I won't, you know, involve, if not depend on, both the city of Cleveland and the county of Cuyahoga. And neither of us are represented significantly in either the Cleveland Innovation Project or the Ohio Innovation Zone in Cleveland. And I think that bringing the city and county in at the earliest possible time is better than at some point presenting projects that we either have to say yes or no to. So that's just my strong suggestion.
Well, I would, as it relates to the site question in particular, I think that's well taken. There are, you know, there's, I think, let's just say plenty of opportunity, but there are a lot of cards to play over time, and you got to figure out the right way to do it to optimize, you know, all the land we have available to us. What kinds of investments need to be made to make them more marketable, more ready. So we're it's noted.
Yeah, my comment wasn't limited to real estate. You know, we city and the county are extremely involved in workforce. For example, the city and county are extremely involved in supporting business outside of, you know, where they locate. So I would just suggest that be expanded beyond just real estate.
Okay, Ted, let's take that up when we get together and talk about the strategies.
Anybody else? Okay, well, I thank you both for the presentation. You're welcome to stay around if you'd like. We have a few other things on the agenda. So thank you very much. And Bill, I look forward to our follow-up.
Perfect. Thank you all for your interest.
Thanks, Aaron. Appreciate all you're doing. I should have started with thank you for the work that Jobs Ohio is doing here in Cuyahoga County. Thank you.
Thank you. Great to be part of it.
Okay, next up is a regional marketing initiative update from Ted.
Sure. Thank you, County Exec. Good morning again, everyone. Good to see everyone. Welcome, Brian Hall. I realize we've gotten some feedback from this commission over the years that you prefer not to be briefed, but we felt that in the context of this innovation district, that it's important for you all as leaders to be aware of the strategy and the initiative and how it might relate to the work that you're doing individually. And so that's why we teed that up. And, you know, we've got to do a better job of connecting the dots here, as Bill outlined. But wanted to touch on an update on some of the initiatives that you approved in last year's plan briefly. As you recall, we essentially rolled over the 2019 5-year plan to 2020 and added 4 elements to focus on in 2020 related to COVID. Paul is going to provide later an update on our small business efforts, particularly through the stabilization work we've done. And you recall that one of the focuses in the plan was to continue to invest and support small and minority businesses. So we've done some significant work in 2019 to advance that objective. Another of the focus elements in 2020 was to accelerate and scale existing workforce initiatives. That work continues. We have finalized and stood up the third leg of the sector partnership work by establishing the IT sector as part of Workforce Connect. So manufacturing, healthcare, and IT. IT is led by the Right Board and GCP. Healthcare is being led by Tri-C, and manufacturing is being led by Magnet and GCP. And so there's significant accomplishments in each of the sectors, but each sector now has an identified leader that is advancing the strategy. Investing in expanding innovation. And so you just heard the state's investment in that realm. As the executive noted, we've talked with Beju in his former role as leading the CIP effort. We felt it was important last year to declare the county's broad support in writing for the Cleveland Innovation Project. At the edges, we have supported an EDA grant for Magnet's new headquarters. And so they're going to build a new headquarters in the Midtown Innovation District, and that which would also contain the Jumpstart's new headquarters and the Cleveland Foundation's new headquarters. And so there may be future ask of the county with respect to direct investment in Magnet's new headquarters. But at the initial stages, we provided support for an EDA award. The last element that I wanted to touch on was this commission supported a marketing effort to kind of brand and position Cuyahoga County as a preferred place of business, both nationally and locally. So let me start with the plans locally. And this really, Mayor Gallagher really provided some strong insights here and feedback on our stabilization efforts, and that while we did a good job of responding to in a crisis, investment in small businesses, we could improve our marketing and outreach to small businesses across the county and improve the awareness of the resources that are available to small businesses. And her instincts were proved in our data. In each of the funds we saw, and as you recall, each of these stabilization funds were executed with our small business coalition, various members at each in each fund. And the data we saw were new businesses that had no previous connection to some of our intermediaries. And so that tells us that while we're doing a good job, there's people that are still not in small businesses and minority businesses that are not connected to our ecosystem. And so we're going to be working with our small business group here in our quarterly meeting next month to really develop a marketing strategy, an improved marketing strategy and outreach to small minority businesses. On the national front, there are several local efforts that are underway that we're trying to tie together. I'll start with an initiative that the executive has led around water, declaring Cuyahoga County as the premier location in the United States for companies that are water dependent. And so working with GCP and the Water Alliance, there is an effort underway to identify those industries that require water to advance their business and encourage them to relocate to the county. And so that is a targeted effort where a marketing content and campaign is underway to engage those companies and present the virtues of our competitive advantage with respect to water. The second is Destination Cleveland is launching a outreach because they've been requested by companies, a talent attraction campaign. So that's a little outside of the direct role of being a convention and visitors bureau, but building on the data and research that they've developed there, they are developing a talent attraction campaign. And so that is in process of being developed. The third leg is Engage Cleveland, which focuses on attracting young professionals and supporting young professionals in the Cleveland market. They have developed a low budget, high impact social media campaign to connect with young professionals in about 5 markets across the country. And so we found some very promising initial data about interest in Cleveland and some very, very modest relocations as a result of job opportunities here. We want to build that out. My department has provided some modest capital to expand that effort. And so this is using Facebook and the other social media LinkedIn and other social media platforms to connect with either people who were born in Cleveland or working in other markets, or those that have passed through or have some connection to Cleveland, and engage them in the potential of coming back to Cleveland. And so that initiative is underway. Team NEO is now developing a regional initiative to market the region, and they have started to identify focus groups around local stakeholders, and that will also expand to national stakeholders about how the Northeast Ohio region is perceived, eventually presenting a value proposition for businesses to relocate here. That is underway. There's a meeting next week to kind of build this out. And so our hope is that that will tie each of these discrete initiatives together. And then ultimately, the county exec has asked that while we're supportive of the regional effort, we want to highlight Cuyahoga County as a place for businesses to relocate to, and in a remote work environment, the potential for new residents and talent to come to the county. So just wanted to kind of give a quick, broad overview that each of these elements that you approved last year, there's significant efforts underway to put meat on the bones and drive results. That's it,
So
County.
Ted, would you like me to share the data now on the small business?
Yes, Paul, that'd be great. Unless there's any
Okay.
questions that people have on the market, or comments or feedback or enhancements. And I'm keeping it high level. A lot of this is a work in progress.
Ted, I would just add, and you may be aware of this already, that our business growth and retention team has created a site called InGear for business, and they're also adding a talent component, sort of born out of COVID last year, when a number of companies were laying people off and other companies were looking for people. We decided to put this matching site up. So this is more internal within the region and the county, but it's another tool that probably could be connected to what you just talked about.
Yes, and when we have our small business coalition meeting, this will be the primary agenda. Gina attends those on your behalf. And so being able to leverage that, I think, will be helpful. Yes, that's good information for the commission members. Thank you.
So members, I'm briefly sharing, and I need to credit what I'm sharing with Candace Williams, my colleague at Cleveland Neighborhood Progress. This simply describes the outcomes of one of the most significant efforts we had to undertake over the past year, which was providing emergency financial support to small businesses impacted by COVID. As Ted noted, we work closely with our small business support partners. So when this grant program was designed, it was all coupled with loans, which our small business partners themselves make to small businesses. I'm describing here the outcome of the grants, as that was the largest number of businesses directly reached. I would say we learned by doing here, but I want to credit our partners for helping us keep focused from day one. The first round of grants that were made, as you can see, administered by our partner ECDI, had 200 grants of $2,500 each. The highest industries represented were personal care and restaurants, and 81% of those businesses were minority owned. We continued that work with a second round by Cleveland Neighborhood Progress, but with many of the same partners helping us design the selection criteria. With somewhat larger funding, because we now had the CARES Act in play, we were able to assist 751 small businesses with $2,500 or $5,000 grants. We continued a strong minority-owned representation at 41.5%. And again, the highest industries represented were personal care and restaurants. Later in the year, as we found that we would be able to put some additional funding into this, the county put in another $4 million for general small business, with 400 businesses receiving $10,000 each. And again, by being thoughtful in terms of location of the businesses and the selection process, we again were able to support 75% minority owned. And the pattern continued of personal care and restaurants being most impacted. So partly for this reason, and with the executive's leadership in targeting a specific industry, along with Destination Cleveland, there was a specific outreach to restaurants. And as you can see, we were able to make 168 grants to restaurants countywide. Again, 38% of these were minority owned, the vast majority being full service restaurants, even those that were temporarily just doing takeout due to the pandemic. So a survey was done, kind of coordinated with this work, which indicated, as Ted has already described, the need for greater outreach to these businesses, many of whom had not been previously connected to the sport ecosystem. So we'll be taking the learnings from this as we advance forward into 2021 and continue to work with our partners to provide both capital and technical advice to small businesses for their further growth. Thank you.
And Paul, can you just leave that up? Go back to that for 1 second. Just wanted to add one more comment for the group. This was an extraordinary work and really demonstrated just terrific collaboration and particularly that round one, we were scrambling in short notice to both create this funding pool with Jumpstart, Key Bank, and Cleveland Foundation was the second pool. And with the county executive support, really did something that we hadn't typically done. One, we'd never done grants at this scale for individual businesses before, and we really had intentionality around targeting minority businesses, which data has proven were at the highest risk during COVID and coming out of COVID, projected something like a 60 to 70% failure rate. And so this survey really showed that we were able to stabilize some of these businesses and restaurants, and particularly the restaurants where some of these neighborhood restaurants really serve as the identity for some of the neighborhoods in Cleveland. So that was very important to us and supports our place-based strategy that is referenced in our 5-year plan. But the outcome is very satisfying because of the intentionality and then the results in terms of the minority focus here. We are now preparing to think through, if we've received additional stimulus dollars, how we should structure and maybe target differently these monies. And so any feedback from this commission as we design that architecture would be particularly helpful, whether it's on this call or via email. We welcome that.
Very good. Paul, do you have anything else?
That's all at the moment. Thank you.
I just want to echo Ted's comments about the collaboration, both the President's Council and the Greater Cleveland Partnership and COSI. We're happy to be participants in either helping to evaluate businesses, doing follow-up calls to those that received grants. Hopefully we'll be able to capture some impact from, what all this did. And to your point, Ted, we know that there would have been a greater failure, but maybe we can quantify how we were able to buck the trends that are happening around the country based on this effort. But, it was an all hands on deck, and it was just great to see all of the partners that came to the table to participate.
And I'll just add a kudo. I appreciate getting appreciation from Ted and others, but let me say that Jack Schron has been probably the biggest advocate in the county for the hospitality industry. He recognized immediately that the COVID pandemic could have devastating impacts on the hospitality industry, which we've seen countrywide, and was constantly pushing us to do what we could with restaurants and others in the hospitality. You saw the impact that we had with our grant program, and we also made, as a county, a huge investment in arts and culture, again, because that's a key part of our hospitality and tourist attraction industry. We had a lot. It's not just the big boys who needed help, but there's a lot of individual small artists, small programs that were, how long can you survive without an audience? So I think we played a huge role, and Jack should get that effort. So thank you.
Thanks for the
Wanna
shout out.
wanna say-
I sit on Playhouse Square's board, and so when the opens up, please come back and buy a ticket. Go to the restaurants, do all the things that we need to. Spend Saturday night down at one of our hotels, because that's one of our positive ripple effects from what we've gotten in here.
Right. Anybody else have anything they want to add?
Zach, I'll just hold up for everyone. You may not be able to see this card, but this was one of, to your point about Councilman Schron, he kind of co-created this on a call with David Gilbert and I, which is the CLEA Committed card that was left in restaurants with Mask and Purell, and people will remember our Gojo project last year. And so on the back, it has kind of the standards and guidance for operating safely, both enjoying a restaurant and restaurants operating safely. So these are, and I don't think you've seen this, county exec. So these are what we help fund to put around the county. So CLEA Committed, CLEA/Clean Committed. So it's a really cool tagline that David and his team developed.
Great. Okay. Next on the agenda, if we're ready to move, Ted,
Yes, sir.
is equity discussion from me. So let me fill in a little bit where we are on equity and how that impacts our economic development efforts. Summer of last year, we saw terrible effects, very inequitable effects of the pandemic, with Black residents getting sick and dying at rates far in excess of what white residents were suffering. And of course, everybody was suffering, but the rate, the disparity was significant. So the administration and the council of the county declared racism as a public health crisis. We've seen this with the pandemic. We've seen it with infant mortality and other areas where the disparities, there's really not a lot of explanation apart from structural racism. As much as, we've looked at all kinds of elements, unfortunately, structural racism exists. It has for centuries in the country. And we have to do something about it. It's unacceptable where we are. So we have to combat the symptoms, which include high poverty rate, less access to good education, worse healthcare access. We have to get to the core of the problem. So to help us take a hard and critical look at how the things we do are impacting structural racism, we activated an internal equity commission and an external looking equity commission, 2 equity groups. For the external commission, we've appointed 17 community civic leaders, and the internal commission, which is co-chaired by Ted and others, is to look internally in how we do business as a county government. The internal commission is looking at things like how accessible are the services that we provide to people of color, what services do not yet exist that would help people of color and the community as a whole, how do our policies and protocols affect some populations in more advantageous ways than others. The external group, which is chaired by Eddie Taylor, who some of you know, encourages community outreach and public participation in the development of equity goals, strategies, and programs, provides recommendations and input to the administration and county council regarding the development of equity goals, strategies, and programs, and meets publicly to provide a forum for the public to offer their ideas and recommendations regarding equity. Both committee and commission have provided initial reports out to the community and have made recommendations, and we are pursuing all of the recommendations that are in those reports. I just want to fill in on what we have been doing immediately on equity, what kind of programmatic steps we've taken. So first, I asked all of our departments in the county to apply an equity lens to everything that they do. What does that mean? Let me start with an example, like the roads work that we do. We do a lot of road maintenance and repairs for different communities around the county. Historically, our primary determinant of where the work gets done is the condition of the road, the amount of traffic, and there is a factor for economic health of the community. Roads are very important where they go. They can impact residents' qualities of life, and they impact businesses. If a customer can't get to a business because the road is bombed out, it does affect business. So this year we asked our Public Works Department to apply an equity lens, and we were able through that to add parts of roads in East Cleveland and the city of Cleveland and Maple Heights and Cleveland Heights and Garfield Heights, in a way that hadn't been done before. Paul already went through, in the midst of COVID, how we were able to support more than 1,400 small businesses to help them survive, and 168 restaurants to help them survive. And he showed you the percentages that were minority owned, which is very significant. We have a lot of people out of work in Cuyahoga County, which means that many couldn't keep up with their rental payments. And that affects them. It affects county government. It also affects landlords and owners of those buildings. We were facing an onslaught of evictions, which would be terrible. So we spent $8.5 million, and we've helped 43 renters avoid eviction, and 82% of those were minorities. Also, as people lost jobs, many couldn't feed their families. We provided over $1 million for meals through the food bank and the Hunger Network and the Western Reserve Area Agency on Aging. We had people who huge an increase in our homeless population, and we also had to deal with the fact that homeless shelters are a breeding ground for COVID. Any congregate facility is at risk. So we sanitized our shelters, we tested at the shelters, we moved people out of the shelters to allow more distancing and moved them into hotel rooms. And we provided porta potties around the county, and we provided hand washing stations on the streets, again, to help people avoid getting COVID. We worked with the Greater Cleveland Partnership to create virtual job fairs. People needed work, and the old-fashioned job fair in person, where the businesses come and the employees come and they get matched up, wasn't possible the last year. So I think Brian mentioned the website that GCP has put up. We used that. We worked with GCP and we did virtual job fairs, and they were quite successful. We ended up matching employees with employers that were looking for people. Schools went virtual, which is a nice idea to talk about, but the problem comes that, how can kids learn if they don't have access to the internet? And unfortunately, a huge percentage, over 25% or more of the families in the county lack access to the internet. So we provided over 20,000 computers and 6,000 hotspots to enable children to learn. And we're looking at ways that we can do more. It's an ongoing effort. We're working with a lot of partners, including Eaton and General Electric, to figure out how best to address the digital divide, which impacts it impacts our kids, but it also impacts everybody in the county and has a huge impact on business. So we need to continue our efforts there. Equity is extremely important. We recognize it. We need to enhance our efforts. We're doing that. We're doing that in the midst of a pandemic. We're doing it in the midst of an economic crisis. And I think we're making good headway. The two equity commissions that I mentioned earlier will be meeting ongoing and continuing to do their good work for all of us in the county. So if anybody has any comments or questions, I'm happy to take it. Ted, you co-chair one of the committees. You have anything you want to add?
No, Armin, you've covered it well. I would just say to this group and to the public that I've said this internally, we've been at this as part of the county's resolution a short period of time. And the changes that I'm seeing in culture and cultural awareness, and we use this term, normalizing the conversations, have been significant of how people are thinking about their jobs differently in this space. And we're going to be a better county once it's fully mature. So we had 4 pilot agencies that reported out in the report. Each, as the exec mentioned, every agency will go through this review by the end of 2022 or sooner. And we will email out to you the link for the report so that you can, and both reports are actually on the link, both the internal report and the case report. So feedback welcome.
Anybody have any questions or comments? Okay. All right, Ted, the 5-year economic development plan update. You're going to take that?
I think I covered that already in my earlier comments. I think we can turn to Paul now for our benchmark. And I'd just say our next 2 meetings will be geared toward completing this year's 5-year plan, and which is due the council June 1st. And so please be thinking about elements of this year's plan, review it. If you have new ideas or things we need to accentuate, we'll be working on that over the next several months.
Right. Thank you, Ted. And I'd just like to briefly review for the commission what's familiar to several of the members, but we're very fortunate to have newer members, and just want to make sure we're giving all the members this information on how the commission relates to the county's very important work of updating its 5-year economic development plan. When the voters of Cuyahoga County approved a new form of government for Cuyahoga County, part of the charter that the voters approved specifically called for the creation of this commission. It prescribes the membership of this commission, but also called for Cuyahoga County to adopt a 5-year economic development plan. That plan is refreshed every year, and it is meant to be a strategic document which lays out the strategic priorities, not just for Cuyahoga County government, but for the entire economic development ecosystem in Cuyahoga County. And that's reflected in the broad membership of this commission, which is meant to draw upon the breadth and strength of all the partners, from our municipalities to labor to significant private sector representation across these sectors. By charter, the Department of Development, which Ted leads as part of the administration, prepares annually proposed revisions, proposed updates to the 5-year plan. We couple this with a review which we present to this commission and to council of our assessment of progress on the items that are in the plan. And that review will be forthcoming both to this commission at our next meeting, as well as when we brief county council. We also, although the charter doesn't prescribe exactly how the commission's to advise, it says the commission should advise. The practice that Ted and I have followed for the past several years has been to schedule individual discussions with each member of the commission for an opportunity for a full and frank exchange of views and recommendations from each commission member directly as to important things to be considered as we update the 5-year plan this year. So we do anticipate that Ted and I will be scheduling these individual sessions with commission members. In order to support this work, we traditionally have also engaged academic support. And this academic support helps us in a number of ways. One way is to make sure that some broad measures of success, which are noted in the plan, can be properly researched, and the latest information on those economic indicators can be presented both to this commission and to county council and really informs the strategies. So I'm pleased to let the commission members know that this year we're going to be working with Baldwin Wallace University. We're in the practice of finalizing our contract, but I know that listening in today is Dr. Christian Nisaya, who along with Dr. Thomas Sutton are the two professionals at Baldwin Wallace who will be supporting this work. And we anticipate that fruit of their labors will be before this commission, certainly by the next time we meet. So that's sort of the process we've put together. I will say that we took I don't want to say a detour, but there was certainly an emphasis last year on the recovery from COVID. We do anticipate now, as we are well into that recovery, that we will certainly continue to note how the recovery from COVID is an important part of our work, but we will be returning back to a more normal situation where our economic development plan really highlights the priorities of the ecosystem, as it further grows and develops. I'd like to pause at this point and see if any of the commission members have any questions about this. All right.
I have a comment. I don't have a question. From my perspective, being a newer member, I think that this is kind of a critical element of this commission. And if I would say there's any kind of takeaway from looking at the old one, I think it's important, and I think you saw during these conversations today, I think it's important to identify who the lead is. In the old plan, it identifies, all of the members that would be involved in a different strategy or objective, but there's really one lead. And, you have this conversation today, sometimes the private sector is, that lead, and they can do things better than government. And how can we assist? How can we get out of their way? But just be a supportive element to that overall objective. And then I would say, that metric setting is very important. And I feel like that might have been something lacking in the old plan. So I'd like to see kind of like that. It's just, you were saying, that kind of current condition and what's our metric, what's our objective, and where are we trying to reach and within what time period.
Thank you, Mayor Galler. Right.
Well, I just have one thing. As we talk about COVID and the recovery, I think it's important that we flag in the short-term opportunities. I don't know if it's phase 2 of recovery but basically reaction to backfilling the spaces, dealing with some of the business closures, and then dealing with I think the bubbling up of entrepreneurship and innovation that we often see coming out of a recession at the neighborhood level. Backfilling our storefronts, thinking about how we bring back some of the vibrancy that was lost as a result of some of the damage that was done to our hospitality, to our restaurants, and so forth. And so I think that quality of life point is a key point in innovation, and then in entrepreneurship, and then it ties in, I think, to the equity conversation as well, and thinking not only about refilling downtown storefronts, but also how we reach our neighborhoods, our inner ring suburbs, and outer ring suburbs, and think about that holistically. So that's a point I would flag.
Thank you, David. So
Anybody else?
again, we'll be reaching out for individual conversations with each member. And we will, at our May meeting, which will shortly be surveying the group to make sure we schedule it at a time that works for all, that will be a time when we as a group review the progress that's been made towards drafting and It will then be, with this group's endorsement, passed on to County Council, where it will go before, most likely, almost certainly, Councilman Schron's committee for an additional public hearing before council takes its final action. Thank you.
Okay. That closes out our agenda. So if anybody has anything they want to add, please do it now. Any comments or questions, directions for us? Jack, you want to add anything as the co-chair, vice chair, whatever, of this group?
Well, just comment only because Ted's had some good committee input on the sector partnership that you led through that. And I think it's pretty darn exciting what's going on in those three groups having been launched. Other than the fact we all had a hiatus of those groups for this last year, the manufacturing sector partnership is working very, very well. One of the groups that it stood up, which would have liked to have done 6 months or a year ago, as it initially was likely to, was Second Chance Individuals. And that program is now kicked off. And I think the first cadre was over 30. And the next round is another 30, I think, that have been placed into companies out there. So it's pretty darn exciting. And as Ted marked off, that the Magnet, which was is the lead provider on that sector, is going to be opening a brand new building. And the objective is that this will be the manufacturing educational capital for the entire United States. And that's their goal. And I think they're clearly on that path to do good things. And so I think there's a nice thing. And then obviously the medical and the IT being kicked off right afterwards are just one in sequence and the next one in sequence. So it's pretty darn exciting. I think that the workforce is taking a different toll. It's a more inclusive workforce than it's ever been.
Great.
If I could add, I meant to make this comment when I made the comment to Bill Kaler about the Cleveland Innovation Project. I just want to compliment the manufacturing sector has taken equity and inclusion to a level that I hope the others will mimic. I think gone above and beyond the call of duty. The leadership group, I think all but one company did an organizational assessment for their own DEI. Also, as I understand it, that leadership group has done REI awareness training. And really, I mean, you're setting the bar for when we say we're going to do these big things and we're going to be equitable, inclusive in how we do it. I've seen that sector really take it to heart. And, I've got a staff person who's been working with that group. And just all the feedback I get is great. So Jack, congratulations on that.
Thanks, Brian.
Great. Anybody else?
One of my part-time jobs.
What was that?
One of my part-time jobs.
Exactly. You have multiple part-time jobs.
Yeah.
All right. If nobody has anything else, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Move.
Second? Okay. All those in favor, say yes or raise your hand or thumbs up.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you all very much for your contributions today. I thought it was helpful. Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Yep. Be safe.